Do I need to thoroughly study the mysteries to revive the supernatural? Introduction. Interview me. What is your opinion on Wu Liang, who is known as a natural disaster? Natural disaster. Isn't he hailed as the savior? He is a good person who combines the 7 virtues and is humble and polite. Your praise is really rare. The public unanimously believes that he is the culprit who committed the 7 deadly sins and caused a great disaster. That's superficial for the general public. Excuse me, what is your social status? The passersby, upon hearing this, still smiled and sharpened their swords, while answering the reporter kindly. Oh, I'm Wu Liang. My name is Wu Liang, the lawless Wu, the heartless Liang. A person who had already thoroughly studied supernatural phenomena before the outbreak of the global catastrophe due to a certain supernatural guidebook. My supernatural research is capable of overturning the entire world. So now, am I becoming a supernatural disaster or a savior? Chapter 1. The Disappearing Spiritual Demon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. As the president of Chen University, I sincerely send my best wishes to the graduates of this year and wish you all the best. The lengthy graduation speech on the podium was still ongoing, and the graduates sitting below were already feeling dizzy and overwhelmed. Most of them were either playing with their phones or whispering. The director of the news department glanced at Wu Liang, who was also fishing in the front row. He was holding a pencil and notebook and didn't know what he was writing. Taking a closer look, this kid is actually painting as if no one else is around. On the notebook, a woman with a petite figure but an indistinct face was delicately depicted, holding an oil paper umbrella in her hand and leaning against the wall with a weak and uncontrollable appearance. She was about to remind Wu Liang not to be so obvious in the first row when she heard other teachers whispering something next to her. I heard there is an awakener in this news department. This is a step up. Did you see the person wearing white clothes on the podium? It seems like the awakener from the supernatural processing department, mostly here to recruit that student. Otherwise, where would our school be qualified to invite such a person to attend the graduation ceremony? Last month, a supernatural phenomenon that harmed nearly 100 households broke out in the neighboring county town. I heard it was the awakened one on stage who went to solve it. Upon hearing the conversation with other teachers, the guide couldn't help but show a smug smile. The awakened student they mentioned is from their own class, and with this teacher-student relationship, I believe they can provide extra protection in case of danger in the future. But her expression was also filled with envy. She doesn't want the awakened person to be herself. After all, if she really wants to encounter supernatural phenomena, it's better to seek others than oneself. During the discussion, Wu Liang had already stopped writing. He tore off the painting he had just drawn and looked up at the podium. In the center of the podium, where the main seat should have been, sat an unfamiliar white-clad man who looked like he was in his 30s, with a stern face as if he didn't care about the graduation ceremony. The principal's seat was arranged next to him, and their status was clear at first sight. But Wu Liang didn't find it strange, and even he could understand the envy of the instructor and other teachers. After all, the revival of ghosts and supernatural phenomena are no longer supernatural novels, they are real existence. 4 years ago, the global supernatural disaster broke out, with a large number of ghosts that could not be scientifically explained slaughtering people. In just 1 year, the world's population was reduced by 1/3. This year, known as the Year of Disaster, has become the most colorful stroke in human history. Fortunately, starting from the second year, someone awakened. These awakened individuals possess various special abilities beyond the understanding of ordinary people, and can even fight against evil spirits, like a mechanical deity worshipped as a savior. The country immediately established a supernatural processing department, which included these awakened individuals and began to systematically and efficiently fight against the evil spirits. It took a whole year to eliminate most of the active evil spirits in the city. Human society relies solely on them to return to a more stable state. But after the disaster year, the entire social class has undergone earth-shattering changes. No matter who you were before, your cultural level, economic level, and all other external factors, once you are awakened and included in the supernatural processing department, you will rise to the top and ascend to the sky. Spiritual phenomena still occasionally occur, and the crisis of the fierce ghost remains like a sword of Damocles suspended above the heads of the people. Only the awakened are the true effective forces of humanity. However, as several people were conversing with envy, the director's gaze inadvertently shifted to the exit of the venue. There stood a strange girl with a petite figure and a frightened face, holding up a big red oil paper umbrella. Why does this child look a bit off? The guide was puzzled and was about to ask the nearby teacher if anyone knew the girl. But before she could say it, a terrifying scene appeared. The girl holding an oiled paper umbrella slowly tilted her head to one side, seeming to have a cute feeling, but as her frightened expression gradually tilted from 45 degrees to 90 degrees, then it rotated to her chest. Finally, when her neck couldn't withstand this degree of distortion and broke completely, blood surged up like a fountain. The splattered blood instantly covered the faces of those around with a blush of blood. Screams and fear began to spread. Ah! There's a dead person. Blood. There's a lot of blood. Help. At one time, the whole meeting place made a mess of porridge. However, accompanied by the girl's eerie decapitation and death, the oil paper umbrella in her hand fluttered over the venue like an invisible wind. What's even more chilling is that whenever the oil paper umbrella completely covers a person's head in mid-air, that person will unconsciously start to twist their head like the previous girl, until it completely breaks and blood flows like a spring. Ghost. It's a ghost. The supernatural phenomenon has erupted. Help. Everyone started desperately pushing towards the exit in other directions, and no one wanted to fall behind and inexplicably turn into a fountain of human blood. The more crowded it is, the slower the speed of crowd evacuation, and the denser the crowd in areas where oil paper umbrellas pass by. The boring graduation ceremony, which was originally drowsy, turned into a human purgatory in an instant. The ground of the venue was instantly stained red with a large amount of blood, and people struggled to escape like stepping on a river of blood. This is my jurisdiction. You umbrella ghost must be too arrogant. Amidst everyone's panic, a calm voice with a hint of anger seemed out of place amidst the mournful cries for help. Many people instinctively turned their heads to look at the owner of the voice, who is the white-clad man on the podium, the awakener of the supernatural processing department. Yeah. This year's graduation ceremony invited an awakened person to come over. For a moment, everyone's hearts were filled with hope. The crowded crowd suddenly quieted down a lot, and their eyes were filled with hope as they watched the man in white flip off the podium and sprint towards the big red oil paper umbrella. Perhaps sensing the threat, the oil paper umbrella attempted to float higher to avoid the awakened white-clothed. Unexpectedly, the awakened person in white suddenly kicked the ground, and a spider web-like crack appeared on the smooth ceramic tiles. Accompanied by the exertion of his feet, he jumped straight into mid-air nearly 4 meters high, level with the oil paper umbrella that was about to float away. His gaze was sharp as he reached out his right hand and pressed it against the top of the oil paper umbrella, coldly saying, "Get down here." As soon as the words fell, the right-handed palm of the awakened person in white clothes had a vertical crack in the center, and then the crack wriggled and slowly opened, revealing a eerie eyeball that stared intently at the oil paper umbrella. At a seemingly casual glance, the oil paper umbrella suddenly stopped fluttering. Moreover, the entire umbrella closed and fell weakly to the ground with a snap. As the oiled paper umbrella closed and fell to the ground, the eyes of the awakened person in white began to be covered in blood, and even a faint hint of blood red could be seen seeping out of their eyes. Obviously, the brief comprehensive suppression of the umbrella ghost also brought him a lot of burden. Once his eyes closed, the oil paper umbrella would once again erupt into murder. But how could the awakened in white give such a chance? He immediately pulled out a dagger and a thumb-sized bottle from his waist, smashed the bottle and applied the eerie red liquid onto the dagger, creating a foul-smelling smell of blood. The liquid wriggles on the dagger like it has life. He stabbed it towards the oil paper umbrella. Unexpectedly, the body of the oil paper umbrella, which was a ghost, was easily pierced. The awakened person in white quickly waved a dagger, and in an instant, the umbrella turned into fragments on the ground. It is obvious that the unknown liquid played a crucial role. Got. Saved. Is this the awakened one? Woo woo woo. That umbrella almost hit me. Help me, benefactor. When everyone saw the scattered umbrellas on the ground, their tense mood immediately relaxed. Some people had already started cheering and cheering loudly, praising and thanking the awakened in white. The kind of survivors who saved their lives even made many people cry. Don't worry, everyone. The ghost has already been taken by me. The awakened person in white turned around and spoke up, ready to comfort the people around him. But before the words fall, a strange change rises again. The corpses that had been harmed by the oil paper umbrella just now, surprisingly, drifted slowly into mid-air without wind. Next came an even more chilling scene. Bang, just like the thumping sound of an umbrella being stretched open, the corpses instantly undergo violent deformation, with limbs as the umbrella bones and skin and flesh as the umbrella surface. They were suddenly stretched into oil paper umbrellas that kept dripping blood. At one glance, there were at least 10 oil paper umbrellas that swept over the corpses, floating higher and higher, moving towards the heads of the crowd. Not only does it block the light and create a large gray area on the ground, but it also casts a shadow over everyone's hearts. The awakened person in white immediately looked at the broken umbrella on the ground, only to find that it was already empty. He glanced at his completely closed eyeballs in the palm of his hand again, and an inevitable sense of despair arose. I didn't expect that umbrella ghost would have such a backhand. Head. My head is out of control. Help. The crowd began to scream again. Dida, the awakened person in white felt something wet dripping onto their shoulders and instinctively turned their head to look over. A few drops of blood red appeared out of thin air on the originally flawless white clothes. He looked up in despair and found 3 to 5 more oil paper umbrellas over his head, dripping blood and staining his white clothes. A force majeure force surged into the brain, and the awakened person in white found that their head had tilted to 90 degrees. Click, blood columns soar to the sky. Ah! Accompanied by a panicked cry, the awakened person in white suddenly stood up from the podium. Looking towards the normal graduation ceremony around me, the puzzled expressions of those around me, as well as the unused daggers and precious blood bottles in my pocket. He was sweating profusely. Just now. Was it just a dream? His hand trembled slightly, and he even instinctively touched his head to make sure it was still around his neck. That's all so real. Fortunately, it was just this boring graduation ceremony that made me take a nap and dream. If such a terrifying ghost were to erupt into supernatural phenomena here, it would be a tragedy. But fortunately, a few seconds later, the awakened person in white still looked anxiously under the venue. Awakened individuals rarely dream, and occasional signs of dreaming are mostly due to the stimulation of a crisis that is about to occur. In the dream, the umbrella ghost only took a few minutes to turn this place into a human purgatory. What if that dream comes true? I can't beat that umbrella ghost no matter what. So he looked towards the place where the supernatural phenomenon had first appeared in his dream, and actually found a strange large red oil paper umbrella leaning against the wall at the exit. At this moment, a petite girl next to her leaned over with a curious expression, ready to reach out and pick up an oil paper umbrella to admire. Don't touch that umbrella. The awakened person in white suddenly disregarded his towering image and instinctively spoke out loudly, scolding. At this moment, the uncontrollable fear in his dream surged back into his heart, and he even felt his head involuntarily start to twitch, with a faint phantom pain emerging from his neck. Is all of this really going to happen? Dada. Dada. The footsteps were getting closer and closer to the oiled paper umbrella, and even a strand of blood appeared in the eyes of the awakened person in white. Unfortunately, his podium was too far away from the east exit, and there was no time to prevent the umbrella from being opened. However, at this moment, a handsome boy walked past the girl at some point. He took the lead in stopping the girl and apologetically said, "Sorry, this is my umbrella." After speaking, he didn't pay any attention to the thoughts of the girl next to him. He grabbed the oil paper umbrella, pasted a picture paper on it, and walked towards the outside of the venue. The girl who couldn't appreciate the oil paper umbrella felt a bit regretful. She opened her mouth and prepared to ask the boy where he bought the umbrella, looking for the book garden www.zhaoshuyuan.com, but only saw a gradually receding figure. Ah! The awakener in white on stage was even more stunned as he looked at the boy's back. The imagined scene of a fierce ghost exploding after touching the oil paper umbrella did not appear. That oil paper umbrella was just taken away by someone casually. Under intense emotional fluctuations, he stumbled and almost fell off his seat. At this moment, he suddenly doubted whether he was too nervous, perhaps it was just an ordinary oil paper umbrella. After all, the fierce ghost did not appear. But after a moment of emotional stabilization, the awakened person in white still took a somewhat uneasy photo of the principal who had just finished speaking and returned to his seat next to him. He asked casually, "Principal Su, do you know the boy who left at the east exit?" "I was just casually asking, maybe I have to investigate again after the graduation ceremony. After all, there are so many students in a school, how many people can the principal remember?" But I didn't expect Principal Su, who felt flattered and surprised after being talked to take a look and actually answer. "You said the boy holding an umbrella." "Of course I do. Half of the teachers and students in the whole school probably know him. Has he offended you in some way?" Where does the word 'also' come from?" The awakened man in white froze, feeling like Principal Su was gritting his teeth when he mentioned that boy. But it seemed like he had some bad memories, and Principal Su sighed before saying, "Oh, nothing, just a student who behaves quite strangely and speaks easily to offend others." "Just tell me your name." The white awakened shook his head, indicating that he had not offended himself. Principal Su answered word by word. "Journalism graduate. Wu Liang." Chapter 2. I have a fierce ghost guidebook. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, the birds on the tree paired up jumped and shot down. Wu Liang hummed strange tunes and lyrics in his mouth, and the oil paper umbrella in his hand was shaken vigorously by him, indicating that he was in a good mood now. But it was precisely because he kept shaking the oil paper umbrella that no one noticed along the way that the bright red oil paper umbrella seemed to be shaking eerily, as if it had consciousness. After leaving the campus of Chenyang University, it took an hour to get home by subway. As soon as he entered the community, Wu Liang saw a familiar black sedan parked below the building, and couldn't help but frown. Slowly walking up the stairs, before the door opened, I heard an extremely arrogant sound coming from inside the house. "Old Chen, the protection fee for this month has been overdue for 3 days. Are you planning to pay it yourself? Or should I personally collect it?" His voice was rough and abnormal, sounding like he had a bad temper. Immediately after, a slightly hesitant voice answered, "I'm really sorry, I'm too busy with work to sleep. I'll go get the money now. Could you please sit down for a while, Brother Wang? I'll be back soon." After speaking, the door clicked open. A slightly emaciated man with a mustache and a flattering smile constantly nodding and bowing towards the room emerged from inside. He just turned his head and collided with Wu Liang, who was about to open the door with the key. The man was about to apologize when he suddenly saw clearly that the person he bumped into was Wu Liang, and his face suddenly darkened. The expression instantly changed from flattery to an angry expression, and he shouted softly, Why did you come back so late, you brat? Didn't you come back early to clean the house? Oh, forget it, Wang is sitting at home now. When he goes back, he'll just stay in his room and don't come out and talk nonsense. Did you hear me? Faced with a series of Gatling-fired words from him, Wu Liang did not answer, only sidled around the man and walked into the house. The curses and complaints of the man behind him gradually faded away. After all, he dared not delay the time to withdraw the money. Enter the foyer, change shoes, and walk towards the bedroom. Wu Liang had no intention of taking care of the burly and muscular Wang sitting in the living room, as it was not his first time coming home to collect protection fees. But the other party didn't seem to have any intention of letting him go. Seeing his back turn and enter the room, Wang Goat sarcastically said, "Oh, isn't this our college student? Can you focus on finishing college without a father or mother?" Bang! The only response to him was the sound of Wu Liang closing the door, and this silent resistance made Wang burst into laughter. He likes the feeling of condescending and satirizing others. However, the expression on Wu Liang's face in the bedroom did not stir any waves. He has long been accustomed to such insults from others. Since his parents were involved in a supernatural event and died, he has been designated by the government to be raised by his aunt. The man who went out to withdraw money with a mustache just now is his uncle. Chen. I have been under someone else's supervision for 5 years now. That's right, Wu Liang's parents died 5 years ago. The world only knows that the global paranormal outbreak occurred 4 years ago, and few people know that there were signs of paranormal events around the world 5 years ago. Moreover, the supernatural event of the death of parents was the first occurrence in China without any precedent, so it did not receive much attention and research at that time, and was even treated as a case of disappearance. Wu Liang, who became an orphan as a result, was still considered unlucky by his aunt and uncle, and their attitude towards him was extremely disdainful. If it weren't for the high subsidies provided by the government, they had no intention of supporting him at all. Moreover, the two of them already had a biological son who was well cared for, making Wu Liang's living conditions even more pitiful in comparison. Including going to college, it was all because Wu Liang managed to secure a scholarship himself before he could graduate, otherwise he would have been kicked out by his aunt's family to look for a job long ago. "Oh, I'm only close to living in the compartment under the stairs when I become Harry Potter now," Wu Liang couldn't help but laugh at himself. Speaking of which, the living environment of my aunt's family is not even comparable to Harry Potter's aunt. After all, they still have to pay regular protection fees. The Wang brother sitting in the living room outside the door is only responsible for collecting money from the doorstep. The person who truly receives the protection fee is his boss, Lei Zhongming. This person is an awakened one. He claimed that the nearby supernatural event would protect everyone, and several residents on the surrounding streets were forcibly charged protection fees by him. Lei Zhongming is not an official awakener, but has joined a local folk gang. If ordinary people go to report him to the authorities, perhaps retaliation will come out before the report results. The revenge of the awakened is not something that ordinary people can bear. So everyone just dares to be angry and not speak up. My aunt's family was bullied in front of the awakened, so naturally they were full of resentment and could only vent to the weaker ones. So who is the weaker one in their eyes? Yes, it's still Wu Liang. Their constant cursing at Wu Liang has become the norm. Unfortunately, Wu Liang has long been too lazy to argue with them, and his current focus is not on ordinary people. After all, what nobody knows is that, Aunt's family is now a little-known expert in supernatural research, relying on the waste left by others. Little ones. 1 VIP under the bed. The $9.98 package is ready for reception. Wu Liang was full of gibberish, taking out the large red oil paper umbrella from his arms and casually stuffing it under the bed, seemingly indifferent to the fact that it almost killed the entire graduation ceremony venue an hour ago. Then he reached out to the back of his head and, relying on his emptiness, grabbed out a book with a tattered surface and even some yellowed paper. The cover only has two distorted large characters. Ghost Mirror. Opening the book, each page densely records the appearance and essence of various fierce ghosts, discovering for the first time characteristics such as location, time, and even weaknesses. If there were an official supernatural researcher here at this time, they would probably be so shocked that they couldn't speak. Because this Ghost Mirror is estimated to have more complete information on Liang-A than any database in the world. As its name suggests, this is simply a complete guidebook of fierce ghosts. Dong dong. Dong dong. Wu Liang casually flipped through a few pages of the already forked ghost, feeling the constant shaking of the bed under his buttocks. That's the oiled paper umbrella trying to struggle. Unfortunately, its struggle only lasted for a few minutes before it quieted down. Zhaozuiyuan.com. At the same time, Wu Liang happened to flip to the brochure page with a large red oil paper umbrella painted on it, and a big red cross gradually appeared on it. Okay, let's see what abilities this distinguished guest has rewarded me with. Wu Liang muttered to himself with hopeful eyes. A piece of drawing paper slowly slid out from under the bed, and it was clearly the thing he had pasted to suppress the ghost when he took the oil paper umbrella after finishing his fishing and painting at the graduation ceremony. Unlike at the beginning, there is now an extra line of blood characters on the canvas that only Wu Liang can see. Shelter. Umbrella is a shelter from rain and sun. When placed under an umbrella, all negative effects will be minimized or even eliminated as much as possible. Once the fierce ghost is completely conquered by Wu Liang, a certain characteristic and ability on its body can be extracted and used by him. Before Wu Liang could bend down to pick up the painting paper, a bright red streak extended from the bottom of the bed, and respectfully rolled up the paper and placed it in Wu Liang's hand. Upon closer inspection, isn't this the big red oil paper umbrella he just stuffed under the bed? The reason why it went from being wild and unruly to completely surrendering to Wu Liang in just a few minutes, and even dedicating it certain characteristics and abilities is simple. Hee, you've been beaten up quite badly, haven't you? Wu Liang chuckled. At this point, the surface of the oil paper umbrella was already covered in bruises, as if it had undergone violent crushing and sharp cutting, and even the ribs were exposed in several places. And the position of its umbrella handle was tightly grasped by 5 fierce ghosts with different appearances, ready to completely tear it up and turn it into garbage on the ground at any time. They seemed to be saying, either recognize the big brother or continue to be beaten. Under Wu Liang's bed, there are 5 fierce ghosts hiding under his command. And now, there are 6. Chapter 3. Wu Liang's work. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, nightmare, continue teaching it how to do things, and come to me after training. Wu Liang yawned and knocked on the bedboard. Amidst the trembling of the oil paper umbrella, it was dragged under the bed again, feeling wronged like a yellow flower girl being taken into the landlord's courtyard. The fierce ghost who was called a nightmare is now the most fearful of the oil paper umbrella, because during the graduation ceremony, Wu Liang trapped the oil paper umbrella in a dream by relying on the ability of the nightmare to stick art paper. Until he brought the oil paper umbrella home, it failed to break through the dream and open the umbrella surface. After instructing the things under the bed, Wu Liang continued to flip through the ghost mirror in his hand. The information of the fierce ghosts on the guidebook keeps getting dimmer, and the handwriting recording them becomes increasingly blurred, but new information will immediately appear to replace them. Disappearance means that the fierce ghost has been eliminated, and the emergence of new ones naturally indicates the birth of new fierce ghosts. Ghost Mirror is like a monitor that observes real-time information about ghosts around the world, making ghosts shiver. However, when turning to the last page, there was no record of any information about the fierce ghost, only a strange string of numbers. 365. Sure enough, are you coming again? Wu Liang's tone became somewhat serious. He had seen such a number 4 years ago, a month before the global supernatural outbreak, when the number 30 emerged and was decreasing every day. At first, Wu Liang didn't understand what this string of numbers represented until the moment the numbers returned to zero. A supernatural disaster has arrived. Now that the numbers are showing again, doesn't it mean that in 365 days, which is 1 year later, humanity will usher in the second supernatural disaster? It seems like I'm looking for a job. A job that's convenient for me to find a ghost. Conquering more fierce ghosts is the only way to gain more and stronger abilities to cope with the next major disaster. He doesn't want to die so absurdly in a year. The intensity of the second major disaster should be even more exaggerated than the first one. After all, the fierce ghosts are getting stronger year by year now. Wu Liang, who had been living a lazy life, suddenly felt a sense of urgency. The sudden addition of a goal in his idle life also gave him some hope. Dong 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 dong. Before Wu Liang could even think about his next plan, the bedroom door was slammed by someone and made a loud noise, which sounded quite annoying. Wu Liang. You asterisk asterisk asterisk. Get me out of here. This sharp voice immediately recognized that it was his aunt who had returned. Why is her younger sister so irritable when her mother is a gentle and kind woman to the extreme? The person who has been yelling at Wu Liang the most at home in recent years is this aunt, and sometimes the words mixed in her words are simply unbearable. Here you are, knocking so hastily to mourn. Not to mention anything else, Wu Liang's verbal skills may not necessarily lose to anyone. If it weren't for rushing to throw the oiled paper umbrella to Nightmare and them for training when entering the door, the few high and low words that Chen cursed at the door would have been rebuked by Wu Liang. I casually threw "ghost mirror" behind my head, and the book disappeared as soon as it touched Wu Liang's head. Only Wu Liang himself knew that this book was in his mind, and others couldn't see or touch it. Creaking, the old wooden door of the bedroom was pushed open by Wu Liang, and as expected, he saw his aunt standing in the living room with glaring eyes. Wang, who came to collect the money, has disappeared. It seems that his uncle has already given him the money, otherwise if he were here, his aunt wouldn't dare to shout. You're such a heartless and ruthless person. I've raised you for 4 or 5 years. After graduation, I won't go find a job to support my family, but when I come back, I'll just lie in my room and pretend to be dead, right? As soon as she thought about the protection fee she had just paid to Wang, her aunt was full of resentment. Now she sees Wu Liang venting her anger directly towards him. Wu Liang, who had already anticipated, shrugged his shoulders and slowly took out a letter of introduction from his pocket, looking like a dead pig not afraid of boiling water. Then he said disdainfully, "This is a letter of introduction from the supervisor, asking me to interview at Shenyang TV station. Are you satisfied?" After speaking, Wu Liang ignored his aunt's next scolding and slammed the door without looking back. After completing the interview and stabilizing my job at the TV station, I will immediately move out of this family. I can't stay in this rundown place anymore. Leave your residence and take the subway to the TV station. Wu Liang was thinking in the car, and the journalist job he was interviewing for seemed quite good at the moment. When there was a supernatural event, I received first-hand news from the TV station and immediately rushed over to pretend to interview on the surface, but in reality, I secretly subdued the ghost. This is also inevitably one way. Thinking of this, Wu Liang once again took out a letter of introduction and began to examine it. He is actually quite curious about something else. Why does the guide give themselves an introduction letter? A series of things I have done during my college years, including but not limited to, the organization held a barbecue party in the classroom, but ended up smoking out the couples who were preparing to go to war in the neighboring empty classroom, a recording of the conductor singing and making embarrassing sounds while going to the school radio station, during the news practice class. The incident of an affair between the principal and a female teacher was published in the school newspaper. We caught a teacher from the Media Academy for academic fraud and successfully expelled him from the education circle. The reason was simply that he did not give Wu Liang a leave notice to leave the school to investigate the principal's affair. Later, he was also thoroughly investigated by Wu Liang. It's hard for me to imagine in what kind of mental state the guide wrote an introduction letter. She wouldn't say bad things about me in the letter, would she? In what kind of mental state did you write an introduction letter to him? How much trouble did he cause us during his college years and forget? After the graduation ceremony, Principal Su led the awakened in white to the head of the news department and asked about Wu Liang's situation. Unexpectedly, she even introduced this kid to a job. Of course I remember the trouble that kid caused, I will never forget it in my life. The guide sighed. Principal Su continued to question, so? Is there someone you know on the TV station? There is a TV station leader who has been struggling with me. She used to be my classmate, and I was thinking of throwing Wu Liang over to torture her. The director couldn't help but laugh at this thought. She doesn't believe that Wu Liang, this kid, can keep his composure when he enters the TV station. Since you and your classmates are not very compatible, can a letter of introduction be useful? Principal Su didn't think there was any problem at all. Wu Liang is always the one who causes trouble wherever he goes. After listening to Principal Su's words, the instructor's smile gradually subsided, and then he said with a complex expression, Principal, have you forgotten that kid's academic performance has always been the top one in the school scholarship? At this point, the two couldn't help but bow their heads and sigh. If we exclude Wu Liang's ability to cause trouble, his abilities in all aspects are indeed far superior to those of other students. As they chatted, the awakened person in white beside them couldn't help but become more interested in the boy who had just taken the oil paper umbrella. But just as he was about to continue questioning, a piercing bell interrupted the conversation. Dingling bell, looking at the phone number, the awakened person in white frowned and connected it. Hello, I'm Hejan, currently at Qingyang University. It's not far from the TV station. What? The ghost you surrounded escaped. It infiltrated the TV station office building. Wait for me. We'll be there soon. We must stabilize the situation on site and don't panic. The news of Li Gui fleeing in the city has made the white awakened one lose interest in Wu Liang's curiosity. He needs to immediately go to the scene to participate in commanding the official awakened one's actions. The incident occurred suddenly, and before Principal Su and the instructor could even say hello, Hejan turned around and disappeared from their sight. Destination: Qingyang TV Station. Chapter 4. The Inseparable Buildings. You are listening at novel full.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, ding dong. Station ahead. Qingyang TV Station. Wu Liang got out of the car and stretched lazily, walking into the TV station office building with a smile on his face. He read the contents of the letter. Surprisingly, the guide didn't say a single word about him, basically affirming and praising his professional abilities. After all, as a new student who successfully caught the principal's affair in his freshman year, Wu Liang's investigative ability is evident throughout the school. Even the director said that he had already communicated with the senior management of the TV station in advance and asked himself to go directly to the personnel department. Qingyang University itself is also a well-known university in the field of media. As the professional first, this interview should be just a formality, and the onboarding process is basically a matter of certainty. Azu. Wu Liang suddenly sneezed. Although everything went smoothly, he always felt something was wrong. Dong, ouch. While pondering, a gentle voice collided with Wu Liang, who happened to be sneezing. Immediately after came scattered paper documents and a black handbag. And a tall woman wearing a plain suit and high heels, who looked like a workplace elite, fell to the ground and caught the eye. This place happened to be at the corner of the upstairs, and she was holding a large stack of documents, so she didn't notice Wu Liang standing still in the blind spot. Sorry, I'll help you tidy up. Although in the eyes of most people who know him, Wu Liang is indeed abstract and causes trouble everywhere. But at least in front of strangers, he will still try to be as personal as possible. Bending down and quickly helping to pick up the scattered documents, he handed them to the woman in front of him, but to his surprise, the other person kept staring at his face after receiving them. Until it made him feel a bit uncomfortable and his heart furrowed, the woman suddenly spoke some strange words. "You! Hurry up and leave here. Don't come to work today." Her tone appeared a bit anxious, and her eyes were filled with a hint of reluctance. These words immediately puzzled Wu Liang, and he instinctively said, "The plot is so familiar. You won't be bullied by the workplace and want to live in an American style here, will you?" He felt like a child who had just entered the campus in the neighboring beautiful country at this moment. "On the first day of school transfer, I went to help my desk mate pick up the rubber that had fallen on the ground. The other person tearfully said, 'No one has ever been so good to me before.' While touching the MP5 in the guitar box, I asked him to go home quickly and not come to school today." Just after roast, Wu Liang saw the woman unconsciously touch her exaggerated black handbag. "Ah! You're really here." But in his prepared expression, the woman did not take out the MP5 from it, just took out a phone and looked at it anxiously. Then his expression changed greatly, and he pushed Wu Liang away and ran wildly towards the outside. It was as if something was chasing her from behind, and when I ran to see her back, I felt a bit panicked and desperate. What a weirdo. Are the mental states of the colleagues at the TV station so abstract? Wu Liang grumbled and shrugged his shoulders, ignoring the woman's strange behavior. He walked up the corner in front of him, preparing to go to the HR department to inquire about the situation. The office building of this TV station is quite large, and I don't know which floor the personnel department is on. However, Wu Liang's figure disappeared around the corner and went upstairs for only a few seconds. The woman who had just run out in a panic ran in through another door of the office building. Her hands trembled slightly, and she looked back incredulously at the door where she had walked back in. The fear in her eyes became increasingly evident. Then he collapsed and sat on the ground, chattering incessantly, "It's over. It's already late, and everyone can't get out." At this moment, other colleagues saw her slumped on the ground and were about to come forward to inquire about what had happened when several puzzled voices came from the hall in a row, curious. "Didn't I just leave the door? Why did I come back? No, what's the situation? It feels a bit like ghosts hitting a wall." Other people who had just left the TV station office building found that no matter which door they walked out from, they would always walk in through another door. The whole building seems to have started a few seconds ago, and no one has walked out of it normally again. Some people are starting to realize that a supernatural phenomenon may have occurred in the office building. For a moment, many people in the hall began to panic, while others kept trying to leave through various entrances and even flipped out the windows. But without exception, those who flip out will also walk back through the door. Mobile phone. Look whose phone has a signal, call the police, contact the awakened person from the supernatural processing department to help. Some people in the crowd have already checked their phones, but there is no signal at all. This is more in line with the characteristics of supernatural phenomena. The presence of ghosts can interfere with the magnetic field and affect the signals of all nearby electronic devices, which was already recognized as truth during a major disaster. Panic began to spread in the hall. However, Wu Liang, who had already reached the third floor, had no idea what was happening in the lobby downstairs. Above the second floor, at most, it is strange for someone to find out that there is no internet left and they have not yet known that this building cannot be left. Of course, no one knows. In the personnel department office on the fifth floor, 2 staff members responsible for recording personnel information are collapsing at their workstations, convulsing incessantly. Their eyes are filled with despair. The 2 of them, who were originally slightly plump due to prolonged sitting, now have sunken cheeks as if they haven't eaten for a long time, and their arms are like withered wood, with only dehydrated and cracked skin barely fitting together. After a few seconds, when the despair in their eyes reached its peak, the last trace of black and red blood slowly flowed out of their 7 orifices. Their convulsions completely stopped. Blood strangely flowed into a dusty teapot on the coffee table, and the dark red cracks on the teapot body flickered like a smile. Then the teapot disappeared into the office out of thin air. Zhaoshuyuan.com There are only 2 withered corpses left that seem to have died in the desert for a long time, and it is unknown when they will be discovered. Outside the TV station office building. Several police cars honked and pulled out a warning line, surrounding the entire building and prohibiting anyone from entering. 10 meters in front of the gate, 2 men and 2 women stood looking ahead with a worried expression. Report the situation on site. A calm voice came from behind them. The 4 of them turned their heads and looked back, wearing white clothes that made them feel at ease. It was undoubtedly the awakened one He-Zhan who was rushing towards them. One of the people stepped forward and said, "Hey team, 3 minutes ago when we arrived and pulled out the cordon, no one had come out of the building, and we couldn't enter through any entrance. It seemed like we were isolated by a ghost inside." He-Zhan looked up carefully at the entire building. The scale of 15 floors made him frown and feel deeply troubled. The area is really too large. There are countless rooms and corners where ghosts can hide, and countless ordinary people trapped inside need protection. Time is tight. Rose and Cannon are watching at the front and back entrances to prevent the evil spirits from escaping again, while the other 2 follow me to protect the people and eliminate the evil spirits. Received. Okay. Boss, please open the door quickly. He-Zhan only pondered for a few seconds before making a decisive decision and issuing an order. The situation inside the building is not yet known, and no one knows if Li Gui has slaughtered recklessly inside. We can only race against time to quickly enter and ensure the safety of the people. Thinking of this, He-Zhan took a step forward and extended his right hand, slowly opening a strange eyeball. I hope the building is still safe. Go. Chapter 5. Difficulties in moving forward. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. He-Zhan's palm and eyes briefly suppressed the isolation of the fierce ghost, tearing open a hole at the entrance that could accommodate 1 person to pass through. The 2 awakened beings around him saw this and looked at each other, entering one after another. He-Zhan himself was the last to enter. Someone. A new person has come in. Does their ability to come in mean they can also go out? What if they're not human? As soon as the 3 of them entered, they heard the noise in the hall. At first glance, almost everyone sat together in a large circle. It has to be said that the frequent occurrence of supernatural phenomena in recent years has also given most people a certain degree of self-protection awareness. They sat around in such a way that they were all in each other's view, and coupled with the spacious view of the hall, any situation that occurred could be detected immediately. The appearance of He-Zhan and others immediately sparked a discussion. They quickly took out their documents from their pockets and loudly said, "We are the awakeners of the Supernatural Processing Department in Qingyang City. Everyone, sit still and don't panic." After speaking, He-Zhan took a step forward and continued, "Did anyone explain the situation here to us? It would be convenient for us to eliminate the evil spirits." But to his surprise, as soon as he finished speaking, a young man nearby stood up and loudly retorted, "Shouldn't you save us first? It's just that, how dangerous it is to keep discussing here. If you can come in, there must be a way to take us out too." For a moment, the scene became chaotic again. Faced with this situation, He-Zhan couldn't help but feel a headache. Now that he cannot find the essence of the fierce ghost, his palm and eyes cannot be effectively suppressed from the front, and at most, he will tear open a hole for only 1 person to pass through, just like before. There are too many people in the hall. This level of channel. Opening it up is actually a bad thing. Under the influence of fear, the people in the hall may trigger even greater riots or even fight each other out over the issue of who comes first and who comes last. He has seen this situation too many times. After all, the desire for survival can easily overwhelm human reason. We can't get out either. The only way now is to eliminate the ghost inside the building. So who can tell us about the situation here first? He-Jean immediately made everyone cut off the idea of leaving immediately. As soon as he finished speaking, the male awakener teammate next to him took a step forward and took out a pitch-black pistol from his pocket, silently surveying the crowd. Protecting the people is certainly the responsibility of their official awakeners. But this premise is that no one will cause trouble. If more people are harmed due to the instigation of a very small group of people, they would rather choose to prioritize suppression to calm down the trapped individuals. As expected, most people immediately calm down when they see firearms. After all, compared to awakened individuals who have never been in contact with them before, firearms actually bring more oppression to ordinary people. In a few minutes, He-Jean and others thoroughly understood the situation inside the building. At present, no trace of the ghost has been found in the lobby, and no victims have been found. The people on the second and third floors have basically come down. But you didn't even notify the higher floors. The female awakener beside her appeared somewhat annoyed. He-Jean waved his hand, gesturing for her to stop talking. He can also understand the thoughts of these people. In the case where there is a ghost inside the building that prevents communication, it would be great if someone could muster the courage to run up from the relatively safe hall and notify the people on the second and third floors. It is understandable that no one dares to go up as the distance from the hall gets further and further away. Lu Yun, please stay in the lobby to prevent the ghost from going downstairs. The priest and I will go up and use the seeds to locate each other if we have any issues. After He-Jean gave the order, he resolutely walked upstairs with another male awakener. In this situation where communication is affected, each of them has a few rose seeds on their body that can provide brief location notifications. This is one of the abilities of the female awakener outside the building, known as the rose. A seed is crushed, and all seeds can sense its position. The two people upstairs quickly searched for the second and third floors, and then prepared to explore higher floors. But just then, a sudden mutation occurred. Boss! Where are the TM people? The pastor frowned as he watched He-Jean open a door on the fourth floor and never come out. When he went to observe, he found that it was just a miscellaneous room inside. And He-Jean has long disappeared from sight. I didn't expect that not only the entrance and exit gates, but there may also be more room gates in the building that can move people to different positions. He is not a newcomer, and he is not so nervous when facing the sudden disappearance of the captain. After all, the seed has not responded yet, which proves that there is no situation on He-Jean's side. Immediately, he was ready to turn around and continue exploring other rooms on the fourth floor. But in the moment he turned his head, the entire aisle behind him was covered in blood, making his scalp tingle. How could it be? When I walked over just now, everything was still normal. The priest was sweating profusely. The sudden mutation did not stop his heart from beating faster, but as an awakener who had completed a mission, he still gritted his teeth and stepped on the bloodstains in the hallway to continue exploring. After all, you can't stay in that miscellaneous room all the time. The blood on the ground was unusually thick, and the pastor felt like he was about to stick his shoes on before taking a few steps. He couldn't believe how many deaths caused the bleeding. How do I feel a bit tired? After walking another 10 meters, the pastor felt even more uneasy. How could I just walk a few times and already start panting? It's clearly strange. Over here. A familiar voice sounded in the room not far ahead. Boss. So you were moved to the front. In this situation, hearing the voice of He-Jean who had just disappeared, the pastor suddenly felt a lot of peace of mind. He observed the sticky blood under his feet and took a deep breath. Then he pulled out a scepter from his waist and fiercely chopped the ground. His eyes lit up, and he looked for Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com, silently reciting a series of incomprehensible Sanskrit. At the next moment, the bottom of the scepter emits bursts of golden light. Wherever illuminated, the bloodstains disappear without a trace. Seeing that the distance was enough, the pastor put away his scepter and turned off the golden light, rushing towards the room where Jean made a sound. After the golden light disappeared, the sticky blood on the ground resurfaced, but the priest had already arrived at his destination. "There's a situation in the hallway outside." Seeing the figure of Jean in the room, the pastor spoke and prepared to report, only to find that the other person was trembling incessantly, as if being poked and laughing. "Boss." The pastor went up with some concern and patted Jean's shoulder. The next second, the trembling stopped. But his head slid down from his neck and fell to the ground, rolling to his feet with bones. His bloodshot eyes stared fixedly at the priest. Empty and hopeless. The pastor's heart suddenly rose to his throat. Before he could react, the headless corpse suddenly burst out with a large amount of blood from its broken neck. In an instant, the pastor was drenched in a chilling sensation all over his body. As soon as he thought of the tiring, eerie sticky blood in the hallway earlier, the pastor exclaimed in his heart that something was wrong and quickly put his hand to his waist, ready to withdraw his scepter. But the next second, an irresistible sense of fatigue spread throughout the body, as if carrying two large mountains on one's shoulders. The muscles all over the body began to become weak. The pastor gasped for breath and half knelt on the ground, reluctantly lifting his head to look at the corpse of Jean. The body slowly turned around, with hands in a holding shape. A dark red teapot in hand, constantly pouring blood out, caught my eye. Chapter 6. Where do the experts help? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, Shenyang TV station, 5th floor of office building. At the entrance of the Human Resources Department, a young man looked up and down at the door sign, then looked into the corridor but did not find any staff passing by. "It should be here, right?" Wu Liang murmured to himself, unable to find anyone else to ask. "Why don't you just knock on the door and take a look?" But as his hand was about to touch the door, he hovered in mid-air again. The next second, his eyebrows furrowed. The rotten smell of the two corpses in the Human Resources Department office faintly permeated through the crack in the door. At this point, anyone who smells this strange smell will realize something is wrong inside. Damn it. Wu Liang gritted his teeth and turned away from the entrance of the personnel department, walking towards the other side of the corridor. Where? Finally, after searching for a moment, we finally found it. Subsequently, Wu Liang walked into the bathroom. "Oh, why do you want to go to the bathroom at this time?" "I knew it would be convenient at home now and come back to the TV station." He shook his head helplessly. "Just now, as I was about to open the door, a burst of urine surged in my heart." Wu Liang thought that even if he went through the process, he would have to interview and chat for a while. It's not a problem to keep holding his urine. It's better to go to the restroom first before going in for an interview. Then he pushed open the toilet door. The first thing that caught my eye was a dark red teapot placed on the wash basin. And the blood continuously flowing out from the internal source of the faucet emits a nauseating odor. This eerie scene stunned Wu Liang. "I just want to go to the bathroom, why is there still a ghost here?" He narrowed his eyes with a serious expression and carefully examined the teapot in front of him. Then, he looked at the sign in the bathroom and said earnestly, "This should be a teapot, not a urinal, right?" After speaking, he took a step and walked over. Without any hesitation, extend your hand directly to the body of the teapot. This action stunned the tyrannical teapot ghost, and then an unnamed anger surged into his heart. Does an ordinary person want to touch their own fierce ghost body? How could it be so easy? The closer a living person is to the body of their teapot, the more obvious their fatigue will feel. The fatigue that directly destroys a person's resistance consciousness from the depths of their heart will make them fall into despair. Then, like fish on a chopping board, let yourself suck and slaughter it. In the end, like the staff in the HR office, they will be powerless to resist until they become a zombie. The amount of blood used to create an illusion from a distance on the 4th floor and successfully trap 2 awakeners was just too much. Coincidentally, this guy happened to bump into himself. Why not torture him severely and then suck him dry to replenish the blood in the teapot? You seem to have a lot of psychological activity, are you thinking about your last words? A plain voice sounded from above the teapot. Before the teapot ghost could react, it realized that its body had been safely picked up. And as the boy's fingers became more and more forceful, it even felt the rock-solid body of the pot start to emit bursts of shattered cries, with more and more dark red cracks on it. If this continues, I estimate that in a few seconds, my true self will be crushed by this guy alive. How could this be possible? At the moment of crisis, the teapot ghost quickly transferred all his remaining blood to the smoke alarm sprinkler on the ceiling of the toilet. Watching the sprinkler turn on, pouring blood all over the bathroom, the young man was stained red from head to toe, and the teapot ghost couldn't help but tremble with pride. Next, it's its turn. Stained with the blood of a person who has been bottled in their own teapot not only makes them exhausted and unable to resist, but also directly corrodes and dissolves the muscles of a living person, turning them into a soft bone completely. Bang! Before the teapot ghost could see Wu Liang trembling and fearful on the ground, he noticed that this kid had rubbed his temples, and then he had an extra big red oil paper umbrella in his hand out of thin air. With a loud bang as the oil paper umbrella unfolded, a strange scene occurred. The blood stained on Wu Liang's body was like melted ice cream, slipping off him completely, and even the moisture on his hair became dry. Shelter. Umbrella is a shelter from rain and sun. When placed under an umbrella, all negative effects will be minimized or even eliminated as much as possible. Wait a moment. Retrieve things out of thin air. Now it's the teapot ghost's turn to freeze. This kid is not an ordinary person. He is an awakener. Little ones, I don't like this guy, tear it up, Wu Liang said coldly as his lips moved up and down. In his hand, he held a fierce ghost guidebook that he took out of his mind while rubbing his temples, invisible to the teapot ghost. The oil paper umbrella just now was naturally taken out of the guidebook, and the demon body he conquered can be summoned at any time through the guidebook. Then, amidst the bewildered emotions of the teapot ghost, I suddenly noticed a shadow behind the young man in front of me. Next up is the 3rd, 4th until 6 ominous and eerie shadows appeared behind Wu Liang. The teapot ghost became desperate. Each of these fierce ghosts has an aura that is on par with oneself, and even 2 of them far surpass oneself, almost reaching the strength to destroy half a city after an outbreak. And they are actually following the command of a living person at this moment. In an instant, the shadows of the 6 fierce ghosts had reached out and grabbed the body of the teapot with their different forms of ghostly hands. The teapot ghost, who used to act recklessly in the entire TV station office building, causing panic among hundreds of people and trapping 2 official awakeners, is now being picked up and kneaded like a little chick. Click, its pot body has cracked open. Chen. He-Zhan's gritted teeth sounded. The blood stains on the walls around him became frozen and motionless, so he quickly slammed open the door and rushed out. Zhaoshuyuan.com. The strange teapot that had been flickering at the entrance of the miscellaneous room disappeared at some point. But precisely because of its disappearance, He-Zhan seized the opportunity to escape. Cough, cough, cough. Where is the pastor? Isn't he also encountering a fierce ghost? He-Zhan's face looked a bit ugly. He didn't expect to be isolated by the power of the fierce ghost as soon as he stepped into the miscellaneous room, and then the walls around him began to permeate with eerie blood, making him feel extremely tired. Not only that, those blood will also transform into the appearance of others in the building to deceive him. If this continues, He-Zhan probably won't be able to hold on for a few minutes. Boss. Are you okay? As he pondered, the pastor's voice came from the end of the aisle. He also crawled out of another room in a state of embarrassment, covered in thick and eerie blood. But strangely, now the blood seems to have lost its effectiveness and it doesn't make people feel tired anymore. After the two met, they had a discussion. The pastor said he felt like he was about to die just now, but the headless body of He-Jean suddenly turned into a puddle of blood, and the teapot he was holding disappeared. He thought it was He-Jean himself who solved the problem with Liang-A outside. "No, it's not me, I just got out of danger here," He-Jean said, furrowing his brows. They didn't solve the Liang-A problem, and it's probably not the fault of Lu Yun in the lobby on the first floor. It's even more impossible for the two people left behind outside the building. After all, the rose seeds that everyone carries have not been used, which proves that no one has encountered the true essence of the fierce ghost. So, what kind of madness does this fierce ghost have to let us go? Is there still someone who can help us? The two looked at each other, unsure of what to say. Chapter 7. People who play tactics have dirty hearts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, ZZ. ZZ, hello. Hello. Hadwan. Can you hear me? On the fourth floor, He-Jean was still discussing with the pastor the reason why Liang-A had let them go when he suddenly noticed that the walkie-talkie around his waist was emitting a sizzling sound of electricity, followed by the sound of flowing clouds coming from it. With confusion, He-Jean raised the walkie-talkie and asked, "Can you hear me? What's the situation? The signal has been restored. Has the ghost escaped from outside the building?" "Ah. Didn't you already solve the Liang-A problem? The phenomenon of ghosts hitting the wall in the hall has disappeared, and we are currently evacuating the crowd. The sound of flowing clouds is also full of confusion." At the beginning, she was still lamenting how efficient He-Jean and his team were. It took less than 20 minutes to find and solve Liang-A. But now it sounds like they don't even know what happened. "Forget it, let's evacuate the people first. Remember to dispatch personnel for the trapped people in the entire building to do a psychological assessment of the supernatural event, and then give me the list." At this point, they can only prioritize public safety. First, rescue all the trapped personnel, and then search for the whereabouts of the fierce ghost. After giving orders, He-Jean patted the dust off his body and pointed to the bloodstains on the pastor's body, jokingly saying, "You go back and wash yourself. It's probably not long before you're going to stink all over this summer." The pastor took a breath and asked, "What about you, boss? Why don't we go back together?" Because he had some muscle weakness from the previous blood damage to the muscles. Upon hearing these words, He-Jean took a deep breath. Then he shook his head and said, "I need to stay and investigate to determine whether it was Liang-A who escaped or whether he has already been expelled. Isn't being dismissed a good thing?" The pastor was puzzled. However, He-Jean narrowed his eyes and answered with a worried tone, "It may not be a good thing, because it represents that the person who solves it is an awakener hidden in the dark and far stronger than all of us. Such a powerful awakener, our official database has no record at all." Speaking of which, He-Jean felt increasingly headache-stricken. Compared to dealing with fierce ghosts, he hates dealing with such difficult awakeners even more. Because no one knows what the other person's awakening ability is, what they want to do by hiding their identity, and what kind of harm their behavior will cause themselves. Liang-A will only have one goal: to kill. But the living awakened are not necessarily the same. The unknown is the most terrifying. After making a plan, ask the pastor to return to the lobby on the first floor and gather with other team members to report on the situation. Inform others of your own speculation and ask them to pay attention to any suspicious individuals when dispatching personnel to conduct psychological assessments of the trapped. He-Jean himself went to the upstairs broadcasting room. The evacuation process of the entire building is still ongoing. After resuming communication, the higher-level staff only found out that a supernatural event had occurred underground during the time when the network was cut off just now. Subsequently, everyone, in the fear of surviving the disaster, heard the circular notification issued by the official awakeners using the building broadcast, notice. Due to the previous supernatural event, all personnel in the office building are requested to come downstairs in an orderly manner and undergo psychological evaluation by the Supernatural Processing Department. Notification, between. Wu Liang, who had just finished using the restroom and walked out, was stunned when he heard the broadcast notice. This voice seems somewhat familiar, and I seem to have heard it somewhere recently. Official personnel. Recently. Voice, so it's you. After pondering for a few seconds, he suddenly showed a strange smile, as if a child returning home guessed where their parents had hidden the candy. I looked around and there were no people passing by near the toilet. He quietly fell back again. Nightmare, you haven't finished digesting that teapot yet. Spit out the remaining fragments to me. The fierce ghosts stored in the ghost mirror after Wu Liang's conquest will have the ability to devour other fierce ghost entities and strengthen themselves. So when encountering a teapot ghost with malicious abilities, or a fierce ghost that Wu Liang is more disgusted and dislikes, he would not choose to conquer and extract abilities, but would feed the fierce ghost little brother under his hands. Once again, taking out the ghost mirror, he took out the broken teapot from his stomach, which he had already eaten, from the grievances of his nightmare. Wu Liang held the fragments and placed them next to the toilet window. Then he put up the oiled paper umbrella in his hand and said with a smile, "After I walked out of the office building, you broke the window and threw the broken teapot, understand?" Although he smiled so brightly, the oil paper umbrella couldn't help but shudder. It won't forget that when he was at home, this kid also threw himself under the bed with a smile on his face and was crazily ravaged by those colleagues. After friendly communication with the new younger brother, Wu Liang casually tore up a piece of the introduction letter written by the guide in his arms and threw it to the ground to stomp on a few times. Then he swaggered out of the toilet. Walking to the stairwell, Wu Liang didn't rush to follow the crowd down, and a shrewdness flashed in his eyes. He is waiting for the people in the broadcasting room upstairs. Perhaps I have found a job that is more suitable for dealing with ghost news than a journalist, Supernatural Processing Department. Remember, report any suspicious personnel to me first, don't panic. He-Jean explained the requirements to the team members again on the walkie-talkie. Then he left the broadcasting room and prepared to go downstairs and return to the lobby to inspect and supervise together. Everyone in the stairwell had a hint of panic in their eyes. Although the crisis of the supernatural event had been resolved, it was inevitable. The police have also dispatched many people to comfort the trapped individuals inside the building and assist them in completing psychological assessments to ensure that no one will experience mental disorders due to this incident. Especially just now, someone found 2 mummies in the personnel department office on the 5th floor. Everyone who saw the appearance of a corpse felt nauseous, leaving a psychological shadow. I don't know if there are any other victims. Hello, may I ask where to go for a psychological assessment next? While He-Jean was still contemplating downstairs, a voice came from behind and interrupted his thought process after questioning. He said without looking back, "After going out, there will be police guidance." "Okay, thank you." After speaking, the person who had just asked quickly walked downstairs from beside him. But it was precisely this passing by that caught He-Jean off guard. Although I couldn't see the young man's appearance clearly with just the remaining light, his back became more familiar to me at this moment. I've seen this kid before. Isn't he the boy who took the oil paper umbrella at the graduation ceremony of Chenyang University before? Is he here again now? A series of questions suddenly surged in my mind. I met this boy twice and searched for the book garden www.zhaosuiyuan.com. Both supernatural events were inexplicably resolved. It's hard not to doubt the coincidence among them, especially since this guy seems to have come out from the 5th floor. The place where the corpse was found is also on the 5th floor. There's a problem. This guy must have a problem. Is he also an awakener? With such doubts in mind, He-Jean accelerated his pace to keep up with Wu Liang. The two quickly arrived at the lobby on the first floor, and he watched as Wu Liang stood in line with the crowd, waiting for the police's guidance to conduct a psychological assessment. Walk to the gate and step away. Clang and clang, suddenly, the sound of broken glass came from upstairs, followed by several black shadows falling rapidly from high altitude. As he was about to fall on Wu Liang, who had just walked out of the office building, and hit him on the head, he himself froze in place with a feeling of no reaction. He-Jean had no choice but to take a step forward and catch it in mid-air. After spreading his palm and seeing the object falling from the upstairs clearly, he couldn't help but have a fierce contraction of his pupils, and even his breathing became much faster. He's so familiar with the falling object. Isn't this the teapot that previously trapped me in the priest, resembling the essence of a fierce ghost? But why? Only fragments. Does this mean that the fierce ghost has indeed been removed, and there is indeed a powerful awakener inside the building that one is unaware of? But this young man is right in front of him. The awakened one is still upstairs. Several thoughts quickly flashed through He-Jean's heart, but he didn't notice them. After falling from the broken glass in front of him, Wu Liang realized it later and was so scared that he crouched on the ground holding his head trembling. He quietly revealed a bright smile. Chapter 8. Wonderful Coincidence. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, are you okay? Upon hearing He-Jean's voice come to his senses and show concern, Wu Liang restrained his smile without leaving a trace and said with a frightened expression, "It's okay. Thank you." The appearance of teapot fragments diverted the other party's attention back to the interior of the building. Quickly calling for someone to come and take Wu Liang away for a psychological assessment nearby, He-Jean turned around and went upstairs again. After completing the assessment, could you please leave through the right-hand channel? Thank you for your cooperation. Upon hearing the police's guidance, Wu Liang nodded in response and glanced at the office building. He did a 10-minute psychological assessment. He-Jean never came out of the building. After all, there are very few traces of battle left in the toilet, and even the one who threw the fragments was another fierce ghost. After throwing it away, the oil paper umbrella returned to the ghost book and disappeared. The so-called trace is just a little clue left by Wu Liang to the official awakeners. This was just a last-minute plan he came up with, and he didn't expect it to attract official attention. It's just a trap to test the official investigation ability. After all, if the official investigation ability is not strong, it's better to do it alone. Compared to this, what interests me more now is a female colleague from a certain TV station. Thinking of this, Wu Liang, who had completed the evaluation, glanced at the woman not far away with a black handbag hanging, ready to leave the place. He is the woman who bumped into him when he first entered the TV station. There is something about her that Wu Liang wants to figure out. Before being isolated in the building, she seemed to have discovered the existence of the ghost. If it weren't for a collision with me halfway through, maybe she would have really left the building. How did this happen? Is this person also an awakener? Judging from the reactions of the official staff and police around her, it seems that no one knows her uniqueness. After completing the evaluation, Wu Liang followed the woman one by one and left here at the same time. Watching the other person's back enter the subway entrance, Wu Liang pondered for a moment before also following him into the subway. Sitting in the car, her fearful and restless expression never disappeared, not even paying attention to the magnificent situation where her clothes were slightly open in front of her. Not to mention discovering a little thug sitting next to her who had been scrutinizing her since getting in the car, with a slightly lewd expression on his face, getting closer to him. Wu Liang has been observing from the side, but has not spoken to remind the other party. He wanted to know if this woman had been pretending from beginning to end, or if she was really scared and a bit dazed. The awakened should not be so fragile, right? Accompanied by the rapid roar of the subway, 3 stops passed in a blink of an eye. The crowds coming and going have made the carriages even more crowded. That little thug also took this opportunity to get closer to the woman in a reasonable way. Looking at the other person's inattention, his restless hands seemed to want to make even bolder moves. Get closer. Get closer. Get closer. Oh, forget it, let's just watch this kind of benefit in the action movie series Time Stop. Just as the little thug's hand was about to touch the woman's slender and stylish legs wrapped in black silk, Wu Liang grabbed her with inexplicable words. Ah! What the hell are you doing? Let go. The little thug immediately screamed in pain and scolded Wu Liang. He desperately wanted to pull back his hand, but found that the other person was tightly grasping like a pair of iron pliers without any feeling of relaxation. This sudden move immediately caught the attention of people around. At this moment, the woman also regained her senses and realized what the little thug had just wanted to do. She immediately showed a disgusted expression in her eyes and moved her body vigorously towards the side. I told you to let go. You bastard. The little thug noticed that the eyes of the people around him were becoming sharper and he couldn't help but panic and began to curse without hesitation. Even lifting the other hand and waving it towards Wu Liang, trying to open him. Unfortunately, facing the playful punch from the child, Wu Liang didn't even change his expression. Just slightly increasing the force in his hand, he saw the little thug kneeling on the ground in pain, begging for mercy, tears streaming down his eyes. I hope that next time you engage in some behavior where the sperm is on the brain, think about whether these small actions are suitable for your mother, and wait for a moment before discussing. Wu Liang's tone was as cold as the cold wind in the far north. After exerting force again to dislocate his wrist, he finally released the other person. At this moment, the subway arrived at the station, and the little thug threw his drooping hand and ran out in a rolling motion. This heavy punch directly drew cheers from the people around. Thank you. Thank you. The woman lowered her head to express her gratitude in a voice as delicate as a mosquito or fly, feeling a bit uneasy when people around her looked at her. Wu Liang sat directly next to her, showing a sunny smile and saying, "You don't need to thank me. Let's just repay your kindness in reminding me to leave on TV." As soon as these words came out, the woman's eyes immediately flashed with the look of the boy she had bumped into when she was about to leave. Ah! So it's you, the woman exclaimed in surprise. My name is Wu Liang, the kind-hearted Liang, and you? Listening to Wu Liang's self-introduction, the woman quickly said, Jiang Min, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much just now. I was just experiencing that kind of thing and I was too scared. I feel a bit dazed. After discovering that the other party had a one-sided relationship and was also trapped in a supernatural event, Jiang Min's tone became noticeably closer than before. But after chatting for a while, she carefully examined Wu Liang's face and looked at Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com with some confusion, saying, Wu Liang, you are not from a TV station, are you? I've been working for 5 years and I've never seen you before. I just graduated today and I'm planning to come for an interview with a supervisor's introduction letter. Of course you haven't seen me before. As Wu Liang spoke, he took out the guide's introduction letter from his pocket and handed it to the other person to read, dispelling her doubts. But to everyone's surprise, Jiang Min glanced at the content of the introduction letter and asked with a strange expression, Are you Zhang Wei's student? Jiang, do you know my supervisor? Wu Liang didn't count this step, which was quite surprising. Upon hearing him say this, Jiang Min's expression became even more strange, and she said somewhat unnaturally, I guess we know each other. She and I are college roommates. The two of them are college roommates, but what does this phrase, can be considered acquaintance, mean? We all live in the same dormitory until we graduate from college, can we still meet each other? There is only one possibility when it comes to the strange tone and expression of the other person when it comes to the guide, Jiang Jie. You won't have any conflicts with my supervisor, and then she happened to introduce me to you for work, right? Thinking of causing a lot of trouble for her supervisor in college, she happily wrote an introduction letter to herself upon graduation. Wu Liang suddenly realized where his previous sense of discord came from. There's a little contradiction. It turns out that Zhang Wei is now a university counselor. I thought she died in a supernatural event a long time ago. It's a pity, Jiang Min said shyly, lowering her head. Without astonishing words, I will never stop dying. Wu Liang was completely stunned upon hearing it. Speaking with the hope that the other person will die soon, do you call this a minor contradiction? Bastard guide. What exactly did she do to make Jiang Min hate her so much? Isn't this pushing oneself into the pit of fire? Chapter 9. Why is this kid everywhere? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, I've arrived at the station. Let's leave first and contact you later. This is my phone number. Wu Liang was still stunned by how much enmity these two had when Jiang Min stood up with a smile and handed back the letter of introduction. There is already an additional string of phone numbers on the letter. Jiang Jie. Are you still useful when you write on the letter like this? Wu Liang couldn't help but twitch his lips as he looked at the letter, which had already been torn apart by himself, and now added another phone number. The introduction letter now looks more like a piece of scrap paper. Jiang Min, who had already stood up and walked out, turned around and smiled, saying word by word before the car door closed, remember to come to work at the TV station tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Pwai. The car door closed and the subway slowly continued forward, leaving only Wu Liang sitting in his seat with a bewildered expression, looking at the phone number in his hand. So. Have I found a job now? To be honest, although Wu Liang believes that with his professional abilities, there will definitely be no problem with the interview. But I didn't expect that Jiang Min could just let him go to work tomorrow. What exactly is her position on the television station? Moreover, I never noticed any resemblance to the Awakener from beginning to end. It seemed like a coincidence that I had been able to detect the existence of the fierce ghost in advance. Well, at least he's my leader now. It seems impolite to inquire about his personal life. As the subway swayed slightly, Wu Liang took out his phone and started flipping through the nearby TV station to see where the rent was cheaper. My job is basically stable now. We need to move out of my aunt's house as soon as possible. That damn place has been spent enough. Although I no longer care about how others evaluate and insult me, over the years, someone has been buzzing in my ear like a fly all day, which still makes me feel disgusted. A new life is coming soon. Wu Liang's side is ready to embark on a new life after graduating from university, while He Zhan's side can be considered headache and anxiety-ridden. After investigating all suspicious areas inside the building, it was finally determined that the fifth-floor bathroom was the place where the teapot ghost was removed, but there were no traces other than the fierce ghost. It's like the unknown Awakener effortlessly eliminating it without leaving any trace of battle. Boss, don't scare us, how could this be? All the official Awakeners present today have expressed that this is too exaggerated. Perhaps that person's awakening ability, like you, is directly aimed at the fierce ghost itself without affecting the surrounding environment, which can explain why there is no trace left. After careful consideration, Liu Yun came to this conclusion. But He Zhan didn't answer the question directly, he just looked at his right hand without saying a word. Liu Yun's judgment may be correct, but then it's unclear how to find the hidden folk awakener. It seems that we still need to work hard on that young man named Wu Liang. Thinking of this, He Zhan unconsciously touched his pocket, which contained a piece of discarded paper he had picked up from the corner of the bathroom, with the words, Qingyang University, written on it. Qingyang University. TV station. Wu Liang. He Zhan had a premonition that even if Wu Liang was not the mysterious awakener, he could not be separated from him. That's it, bring back the fragments of the teapot. Today's task is for the pastor to write a report and file it. After speaking, he turned around and went downstairs, ready to leave. After all, the remaining finishing work inside the building no longer requires them, awakened individuals, to stay here and handle it. Just hand it over to the police. Just a few steps away, He-Jean suddenly thought of something. I was so busy today, I forgot what I had planned to do at the beginning, he said with a sharp slap on his forehead and self-deprecating, then take out the phone and dial a number. Hello, is that Principal Su? I had an urgent task just now and left without saying hello to you. What is the name of the awakened child at school? Can you give me his contact information and home address? Principal Su, who received a call from He-Jean, was somewhat excited. He thought the official had forgotten about this matter. After all, at the beginning, I invited He-Jean to attend the graduation ceremony at Shenyang University to see if the awakened child was qualified to enter the supernatural processing department. Principal Su quickly responded, the child's name is Chen Wang and he lives at number 26, Pumin Community, Dongting Street. His phone number is 186XXXXXXXXX. After receiving the exact news, He-Jean was preparing to hang up the phone. Suddenly hearing that Principal Su seemed to have something in mind, he quickly continued, by the way. Captain He, Chen Wang's child and the Wu Liang you inquired about this morning live together. Maybe you can both meet him when you go. Okay, I got it. This news surprised He-Jean a bit. He didn't expect that everything he encountered today was connected by this boy named Wu Liang. Is this a bit too coincidental? Why is this kid everywhere? After hanging up the phone, he stopped a taxi on the roadside and prepared to go to Chen Wang's house. On the way, He-Jean sent a message to the team member in charge of intelligence collection in the department, asking him to send the information of the awakened person recorded near Dongting Street. Sure enough, the thug surnamed Lei is still collecting protection fees on Dongting Street. Looking at the people on the list, He-Jean also thought of what happened 2 years ago. That awakened person named Lei Zhongming was initially a thug, and after awakening 2 years ago, he wanted to join the official supernatural processing department. Unfortunately, after our investigation, we found out that this guy not only has a hot temper, but also does not obey discipline. So the official did not approve his application. After recording the person's awakening ability and intensity, they will no longer pay attention to it. Zhaoshuyuan.com. As for him collecting protection fees while sitting in the gang. Although this is a relatively bad thing, in this era of supernatural revival, awakened beings are not likely to intervene as long as they do not cause any life-threatening events. After all, the number of awakened individuals among the people is actually not small. If they intervene and control everything they do, it will actually arouse some people's resistance consciousness. At that time, the authorities will have to manage and deal with supernatural events in society, and also pay attention to the anti-social behavior of the awakened people, which is truly not worth the loss. Drip by drop, He-Jean searched through the phone book for a long time and found a phone number, slowly dialing through. When I thought about the time when I was responsible for recording the awakening information of Lei Zhongming, I was not yet the team leader. At that time, the person who came to investigate him was myself. He-Jean couldn't help but shake his head and lament how time flies. It was already 4 years ago that I became an awakened person in the blink of an eye. Who is that? How did you know this phone number? I can't explain clearly. I'm going to trouble you. After dialing, a rough voice came from the other side, cursing. I'm He-Jean, I don't know if you still remember me, He-Jean said calmly. Upon hearing this, there was a moment of silence over there. Then he quickly became friendly and responded, of course I remember. How did brother He suddenly contact us? We don't remember doing anything that could have alarmed the authorities. He-Jean didn't beat around the bush and directly pointed out the purpose of his visit. I'm just asking about someone. They live at number 26, Pumin Community, Dongting Street. Do you think there's anything unusual about this person? His name is Wu Liang. Chapter 10. Chen Wang and Wu Liang. You are listening at novel full.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, outside the Pumin community. He-Jean didn't rush up, instead he ate a bowl of noodles downstairs. Looking up at the already yellowish sky, he couldn't help feeling a bit dazed on the way into the community. Today, from the graduation ceremony in the morning, to the supernatural event on the TV station at noon, and then to the official home visit interview in the evening. At this moment, He-Jean's interest in Wu Liang has far exceeded the true purpose of his trip, Chen Wang. If you are truly an awakened person, why endure all kinds of grievances? He-Jean was puzzled. He has already inquired through Lei Zhongming. Lei Zhongming has a younger brother named Wang under his command who is responsible for collecting money in this community, and he already knows the situation of the Chen family in his heart. According to Wang, Wu Liang is treated like a rat on the street in the Chen family. Anyone can go up and scold him, and he never makes any substantial behavior to resist. He is just a cowardly and incompetent guy. It is normal for parents to die together, stay under someone else's protection and not be welcomed, and not dare to resist. If it were for anyone, it would inevitably cause some psychological problems, even if their personality becomes dark and insecure, which is reasonable. But the calm in that kid's eyes cannot be fake, it's an incredible confidence. Standing in front of the slightly dilapidated anti-theft door of the Chen family, He-Jean thought of Wu Liang, who was talking to him and asking for directions in the office building. At that time, he didn't feel any negative emotions, and even revealed an indifference to the supernatural events happening in the building he was in. Speaking of when the glass fragments fell from the sky, I don't know if this kid's fear was true. Cowardly and incompetent, confident and mysterious. These two contradictory words can strangely appear on one person at the same time. He-Jean is increasingly eager to get to know this boy named Wu Liang in person. Ding dong, ring the doorbell, and within a few seconds, you can hear the sound of slippers crouching inside to open the door. Who are you? The woman who opened the door had a slightly plump face and a slightly aggressive appearance with protruding eyebrows. She frowned impatiently and asked. Taking out his documents from his pocket and opening them, He-Jean restrained his curiosity towards Wu Liang and said calmly with a hint of dignity, "Captain of the second team of the Spiritual Processing Department. He-Jean, come and learn about the awakening situation of your child." Upon hearing the name, Supernatural Processing Department, the woman remembered that her own son Chen Wang had been unhappy all day when he returned home. I asked him the reason and found out that it was because I had heard from the principal today that after the graduation ceremony, there will be a big shot to check if he has the qualifications to join the Supernatural Processing Department. But that big shot left in the end due to an urgent matter. He thought he had lost the opportunity to enter the official position. Isn't this person in front of me the big shot that Principal Su talks about? Auntie quickly changed into a flattering expression and said in a harmonious tone, "Oh, Captain He, please come in quickly. I'll ask Xiao Wang to come out and show you." The door opened, and Aunt hurriedly walked inside while loudly scolding her husband Chen Yi to go and pour a cup of tea for Captain He. Entering the living room, He-Jean scrutinized the constituent elements of the family. Wives are dominant, husbands are weak, and children. He saw Chen Wang walking out of the room, although with a smile and ecstasy on his face, the slight redness in the corner of his eyes proved that he had cried sadly in the room before. "Alas, my temperament is a bit lacking. Hello, Captain He. I am Chen Wang, a graduate of the journalism department at Qingyang University this year. My awakening ability is to guide emotions." Chen Wang's voice trembled slightly. The thought of having the opportunity to join the Supernatural Processing Department and become the official awakener of human beings made him somewhat excited. He-Jean could see that Chen Wang in front of him was not only excited, but also a bit nervous, speaking as if reporting tasks with a monotonous tone. After all, he is still a newly graduated child. Could you please provide a detailed explanation of your abilities and show me if possible? He-Zhan said casually, actually more curious about where Wu Liang was. Upon hearing these words, Chen Wang quickly explained, I can repeatedly change everyone's emotions within a certain range, whether it's ecstasy or great sadness, or even generate world weariness without any problem. After speaking, He-Zhan nodded to himself. This ability is actually quite good. Although it is not possible to confront Liang-A head-on, if a large number of people are trapped, such as an afternoon TV station, it is completely possible to immediately make all the trapped people control their emotions and calm down to obey the command. It can be considered a more suitable ability for auxiliary types, which can save a lot of unnecessary trouble. If it's for display. Chen Wang felt a bit embarrassed. He couldn't directly use the awakening ability on He-Zhan, was it too offensive? Someone. The ant beside her quickly stepped forward to clear the situation. Then she walked to the door of Wu Liang's room, raised her hand and banged twice, shouting loudly, Wu Liang. You rabbit. Come out quickly. I'll come find you if I have something to do. The big shot was present, almost habitually cursing. Ant was glad she had kept her mouth shut, otherwise she would have appeared impolite. Creaking, the old wooden door of the bedroom was pushed open, and a young man with slightly disheveled hair and a delicate face walked out with a yawn. At the moment of seeing him, everyone present brightened up. My aunt's family thought that someone could finally be used as an experimental object to show Chen Wang's abilities. He-Zhan is looking forward to finally meeting Wu Liang head-on. Come, find Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com, stand here. Auntie couldn't help but pull Wu Liang between Chen Wang and He-Zhan, without explaining what he was planning to do. But Wu Liang looked completely indifferent, still drowsy, and didn't even take a closer look at He-Zhan. After all, at the moment he walked out of the room and saw the official awakener at home, he knew what the other person was doing. Isn't it just to test the awakening ability of my foolish cousin? Anyway, it's impossible because he was completely exposed. He didn't leave so many clues. Captain He. I'm going to start. Chen Wang paid no attention to Wu Liang's refusal and instinctively reminded him, then raised his index fingers and pointed forward. At the same time, his pupils turned into a strange ink color, staring fixedly at Wu Liang's face, with a hint of mockery in his eyes. The emotions being guided now are extremely sad, and now Wu Liang has no choice but to cry bitterly in front of the official awakeners to highlight himself. Cry. Cry. Cry bitterly when you remember the tragedy of your parents. 1 second, 10 seconds, 1 minute. Time slowly passed by, and Chen Wang was so tired that he could see that his eyes were dry and dehydrated, but Wu Liang still stood there unmoved. Not to mention crying bitterly, the tears in his eyes are probably squeezed out when he yawns. Alright, I want to go take a nap in the afternoon. An untimely yawn reappeared, and Wu Liang was impatiently stared at by Chen Wang in place. He stretched lazily and said he was really tired now. At this moment, everyone in the living room was stunned. Even He-Zhan looked at Chen Wang with a strange expression. Are you planning to show me this after such a big battle?